There you go. There's the music. That means it's time for Animal Talk. Some of the best doggone pet people on the planet helping you with your pets, whatever the problem is. Talking about pet adventures, pet problems, animal issues, and everything in between. I'm Jamie. I want to appreciate everybody for joining the party. Please take a moment, like, subscribe, comment, all that business. And again, animaltalkradio.com is your one-stop shop for all the Animal Talk shenanigans. And today we're going to sweat it out a little bit. We're sweating to the oldies. No, just being silly. But our guest today, author and activist, I would say, Ethan Brown. Ethan, welcome to Animal Talk. I love under you there the sweaty penguin.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ethan, before we get into the animal stuff, Ethan, tell me about your childhood.
Sure. So, I grew up in Bethel, Connecticut, and I was never all that outdoorsy growing up. Around 4th, 5th grade, my dream was to open a restaurant called Brownies. I made this whole plan with my friends, created a website, learned how to cook all different things. And then in more, I think 5th grade to maybe 10th grade, I actually went down this whole rabbit hole performing a mental math stage show called Mathemagics. So I was performing, I got to go to New York City, Las Vegas, Chicago, New Delhi, all over the world doing this show. I was trying to, at the time, I really loved math, and I was trying to show people that math was fun and interesting through this show. Realized in high school that I could not do calculus or statistics or anything to actually pursue math as a career. I was more just into the numbers and patterns and that kind of thing. But it was around then that I started learning about climate change, and I was really struggling to become interested in it. I saw it as really important, but I took an elective on it in high school, didn't really like it. And it really took until college where I was just like, okay, at this point I was interested in film and television, and I was like, all right, I need to be able to tell stories. This is an important story. I have to figure out a way to like this. And once I did, after taking some courses, that was kind of the precursor to what the Sweaty Penguin ended up being. So I see this kind of through line from childhood to now of combining education and entertainment in very different ways.
So the Sweaty Penguin is a podcast, and it's a blog attached to it as well, and you're writing about this.
Yeah, the Sweaty Penguin began as a very small blog, then scrapped that and started the podcast in early quarantine. So that's been almost 2 years now. Okay. And now we're growing very quickly. So we're doing a lot more web content as well. We just launched a website redesign very recently. The podcast is sort of a deep dive into individual climate issues. We will do a comedy monologue, sort of like if you watch any late night John Oliver, Hassan Minhaj type, breaking down an issue. Okay. And then we'll talk about it with an expert. And we've interviewed professors from 11 countries across 5 continents, and had the pleasure to talk to some really cool people.
So, because it's taking a lighthearted look at climate change. I just because I like as I teach high school too, and I have my English 12 kids. They do a research paper, and I tease, and I tell them, you're picking a topic, you can talk about the environment, you can talk about famous people, you can write about, you can research anything, like if you want to do some fiction, you can talk about that, that whole fakey climate change thing, and then you get some kids that are like really passionate about it, and they kind of lose their mind. You don't understand how dangerous this is. And I'm like, okay, you guys don't understand comedy apparently, because I was joking. But I like that you're taking a lighthearted look at it. But how serious is the problem? Are you a big podcast listener? I've asked you 6 questions there in that one thing. Let me start with just one.
Yeah, pick your favorite.
Are you a big podcast listener? Do you listen to many other podcasts?
I do.
Okay.
My feed may surprise you. I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so
Okay.
most of my podcasts are sports and Steelers stuff.
Have you
But
ever heard of The Dollop?
I have not.
Oh my God. Okay. So it's an American history podcast. There's two comedians, Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds. And Dave Anthony he's like a history nut. He just loves history. And Gareth is just kind of like your average Joe, doesn't know much about nothing. And but very, very funny. And Dave will start telling him a story. He's like, "Holy crap! This is the invention of crazy glue," or it's like, "Holy crap! This is Harriet Tubman's story," and it's as the story unfolds. But they are really big climate change advocates, and they're trying to do this grassroots thing, and they got really frustrated because it just stalled. Because people just didn't seem to, just aren't taking it seriously. So, which leads me to my second point. So, one, check out The Dollop because it's really, really funny American history stuff. And they're huge, activists for climate change. But how big of a problem is it? Because to listening to them guys, because they'll talk about it they'll do their whole, it's about John DeLorean or the one about the Uber guy. Oh my God. It's so funny. It's awful, and it's just it's they just show the ugly side of human nature and make fun of it along the way. But at the end of the show, they try to advocate for the climate change, and people just don't take it. But they're so passionate about it, and they're saying we are in serious trouble, and not like, oh, this will happen to my great grandkids. It's like they're like, no, this could very well go to pieces in our lifetime. Is that true? How much trouble are we in?
Yeah, people are often a little surprised that we do comedy and climate change. And don't get me wrong, comedy does not mean sugarcoating. Climate change is really, really serious.
Okay.
Not only is it, you mentioned the whole problem for your children and grandchildren. Not only is it not that far out into the future, but it's here right now.
Okay.
We've seen historic hurricanes like Hurricane Ida last year that drove from Louisiana all the way up the East Coast. We've seen historic wildfires. Colorado just had one in end of December that literally snow had to help put it out. We've seen new research that the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica, which is the size of Florida, is now in about 5 years will fall into the ocean. And think about what a block of ice the size of Florida is going to do for sea level rise. So we're seeing a lot of this now, and it's really affecting a lot of people, and it's affecting all of us in terms of our health, our money. You think about how many of your tax dollars are going toward cleaning up these storms. So it's here. What I've been trying to do is frame this a little more accurately. Climate change is not going to cause the extinction of humanity. Even if we did nothing, I don't think it would get that far. And obviously we do want to do something, but that's because we want to live a life in the future that is similar-ish to the one we live now. And so I prefer not talking about how do we fix climate change, but rather how do we get it under control? How do we create a world similar to what we have today?
Okay. What are the immediate dangers? What are the immediate repercussions? Are we losing species? Are we losing what are the immediate dangers afoot here?
I feel like this is some of the most overwhelming talk that I give as a comedy person, but yeah, we're in the middle of a mass extinction event, I think, on the scale of thousands times worse than by natural causes.
Oh, wow.
We're losing so many species all over the world. In particular, you think about these tropical rainforests and a lot of islands where there will be species that are just on this island. I didn't realize until we did an episode that it came up in, but what's it called? The animal that Sacha Baron Cohen plays in Madagascar.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Lemur, I think. Yeah, the lemur. Those are only on the island of Madagascar.
Oh,
So
okay.
there are species like that are actually quite common that we know about that are not just endangered, but like they're in one spot. And when you have a place like Madagascar that's getting whacked by cyclones now,
Mm.
that's a big concern. So certainly for animals, climate change is a really big deal, and a lot of them are facing other environmental threats as well. A lot of marine species see things like commercial fishing, runoff. You can say the same about on land. There's a lot of deforestation. There's a lot of land change. So yeah, animals are going through it just as much as people are.
So I think that might it just armchair quarterback it that might be the heartstring to pull on, because people say, I don't give a crap about those people living over there or wherever, but you throw some Sarah McLachlan on underneath it and have a couple fuzzy animals that are in trouble, you might get people to do something and react to it.
I think every person responds a little differently.
Yeah.
And that's why on the Sweaty Penguin, I always try to break down every facet of an issue. So I'll talk about how something affects the environment, which would include things like animals and plants and all that good stuff. I'll talk about how it affects the economy. I'll talk about how it affects health, justice, security. Climate change really finds its way into all different facets of our life. And I feel like if like for me, I wasn't really a nature person growing up. I have learned to really love animals, but it's hard for me to maybe care about a national park the way another person might. But I certainly care about how much money's in my bank account. I care about my health. So those are angles where I can look and say, all right, this really affects me, even if I can't necessarily relate to this faraway island that I've never heard of.
Who are our big culprits? Is it our petroleum and coal based energy? Is it what's the biggest culprit?
So climate change is caused by greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide.
So it's cows. It's the damn cows. I'm kidding. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's a whole other rabbit hole.
The people do blame the cows. The cows are messing us up.
We'll go down this for a minute. So,
all right.
Cows belch methane as part of their digestive process.
See?
So, in that sense, yes. That said, there are ways to improve on that, and I think that's also it is a serious percentage of global greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane, but it's something that can be improved, and it's something that I think ultimately we're trying to find the low-hanging fruit when we talk about solutions, and that is possibly the highest fruit on the tree. Maybe like you can't control cows' digestive process that much. So if we're looking to things like fossil fuel emissions, be it coal, oil, or natural gas, not only are these things that we have alternatives for the most part, but very often the alternatives are cheaper. Wind and solar have become increasingly competitive energy sources. Even nuclear, you can throw that in the conversation. So certainly when we're looking at how do we reduce emissions, I tend to prefer to say, all right, what's the easiest stuff we can do? And cows are maybe at the bottom of that list.
You talk about nuclear, and I was watching the Olympics, and there's like the slalom, right? The skiers go down and flip and whatever, but they're showing this long view of it, and like just it's got to be like not even 300 yards away are like these four like massive. When I see them, I automatically think that they're nuclear reactors. Those those big concave things, those big towers, those big fat squatty towers. There's like four of them, and they're like built on the former it was like smelting site or something. And I'm like, that's not a smell. That's a freaking nuclear reactor. I'm like, what kind of propaganda is this? I could be wrong. They could use those big tower things in smelting projects too, I guess. But sure as hell looked like a nuclear reactor place to me. And I don't know if I'd want to be skiing in it. So, but anyway, major aside. So, the culprits of the fossil fuels and then the petroleum and the all that. Electric cars and batteries scare me. Is there problems with? Have you heard about are there problems with the batteries and the creation of the batteries for these electric cars?
Absolutely. Every climate solution has pros and cons,
Okay.
and that's important to always keep in mind. With electric cars, of course, creating the batteries leads to lithium mining, which there have been a lot of land conflicts over that. There have been attempts to do this mining in Native American land, in environmental justice communities where it might be more marginalized people living near that site. So those are important things to take into consideration. Also, just the manufacturing process of the car, which you can say about all cars, not just electric. Getting the metal, all that good stuff. Growing the rubber to make the tires. We did a rubber episode recently. And then at the end of the car's life, where does it go? How does it get disposed of? So these are all important questions. And I think what surprises me is the sort of trendy thing is to get the electric car, right? But when you actually compare, if you have a gasoline powered car that reasonably fuel efficient, has some more legs on it, driving that to the end of its life would be less emissions than going out and buying a new electric car because of all of those inputs that I just discussed.
Right.
So I always think it's important to really consider the nuance of these things. I think it's easy to just jump on the trend, but in reality, it takes a little more thought before you do that. That's not to say electric cars can't be a viable solution. Certainly these things can be done safely. It's just to say maybe don't rush into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, Michigan here in the cold and how they work, they're less effective in the cold, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, so it's interesting. But there's a lot of electric cars on the road. But I actually wouldn't mind. I could really use a self-driving electric car. I could just take a nap on the way to work. You catch up on your sleep. It doesn't have to fly. I'm not upset that we don't have flying cars yet. There's people that are we should have had flying cars. We should have had flying cars by now. But I'm not too upset about that. I'll take a self-driving electric.
Oh, absolutely.
So what's the bang for our buck? What can we do as individuals, and what could we do as because the United States is we're pretty, we're pretty mass consumptive culprit here on the planet. I would say. Again, you've studied this. Are we who is the biggest culprit? Is it us or is it somebody else?
In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, cumulatively, the United States has been the largest emitter. Today, it would be China. U.S. would be number 2.
Okay.
Regardless,
can't even do that right. Now we're number 2 again.
Yeah. I guess we're second to last if you want to do it that way. But yeah, in terms of where we can make progress, first off, I'll say that there's this environment versus economy idea out there that we just don't find to be accurate. We find in so many ways the environment and economy can actually be improved together. You think about all those storms I was talking about, those certainly cost a lot of money to clean up. You think about solar and wind being increasingly competitive, but even just climate change is largely about efficiency. You think about if you can make your heating system run on less energy, you're going to save money and you're going to help the climate. So in so many ways, it's a much easier, it's not really a trade-off even. It's just let's take these steps and improve everything. In terms of how we do that, I sort of give 5 little things that individuals can think about, because ultimately individual action works best when it's affecting community level change. So first, I always say, find the low-hanging fruit. If you aren't a big meat eater, feel free to stop eating meat. I'm not a big fashion person, so I tend to wear my clothes until they've got holes in them, as opposed to buying the new fast fashion trend all the time. So you can take steps like that fit your lifestyle, but I wouldn't go overboard, because then it's like dieting and you'll just kind of fall off the rails. Second, I always say, do your research. Things like that electric car dilemma I was talking about, you want to be able to understand those things and not just follow the trendiest thing to do. Third, I always say, uplift people who are doing good things. In the US, I think that's largely about vegan bashing. I don't know why we insist on this. It's fun, maybe, but
you know how you can tell if somebody's vegan.
They'll tell you.
In 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you. All right, no,
yeah.
That's it. And I'm vegan bashing. There we go.
See, it's so easy and fun, but
it's the low-hanging fruit.
But I mean, yeah, there you go. I guess my feeling is they're doing us such a number, but like whatever reason they're doing it for, it really helps us out. So I feel like if that could at all be an impediment to someone deciding to be vegan because they don't want to be made fun of, then that becomes something I'm concerned about. But it's other things too. I mean, if people aren't keeping up with the fashion trends, if people are using I don't know. There's a number of directions you can go there.
I love these small actions. Do you think keep going? Yeah.
So 4, I have 5. So 4 would be to use your voice. And that can be a number of ways. So you had titled me as an activist earlier. I actually wouldn't even go that far. I've seen a lot of environmental activists have a lot of success doing, whether it be protesting or volunteering. But for me, I can't stand crowds.
An awareness advocate.
Yeah, there you go. Say
let's
communicator.
Get that on your name tag. Awareness advocate.
I like that. But yeah, I think there's multiple ways you can use your voice. And for me, it was really, I was a writer. I liked trying to explore the nuance and kind of use my comedy skills and have fun with that. So I created my podcast and my website. You can do something at your job or in your home. You can really find ways to use your voice however you see fit. And then my last one is to talk to someone you disagree with. And I think this may be the most controversial of my 5, but if you'll allow me to defend it, I think that a lot of past environmental progress has come when people are at least willing to talk to each other and agree on what the problems are. We look back at the 1970s. It was a few years after Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring came out. There was an oil spill in '69. A lot of people were talking about the environment. And what happened? We passed the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, established the Environmental Protection Agency, and a whole bunch of other major environmental legislation. And this was under a Democratic Congress and Republican presidents Nixon and Ford. Mm. So when people were at least on the same page about what the problems were, certainly they disagreed on solutions, but just by having that more productive conversation, we were able to make progress. So we're really pushing to try to move the conversation back into this is the problem, what can we do about it space. But even if you just talk to someone about sports or books or movies, just being cordial, you don't have to be friends, but just engaging with each other. I really think that is possibly the number one thing an individual can do to help the environment.
It's interesting sociologically right now. People and the algorithms are forcing you into these echo chambers of like-mindedness. I think all the social medias and it's like, oh, you like these sorts of things, and so they give you more of those sorts of things, and it doesn't. actually shelters you from the things that you don't like, that might make you uncomfortable or you might disagree with. I think our social medias are hampering the effort. I think they're great because it's like, oh, let's have this meeting and let's do a protest, or let's, sign this petition, or let's, activate on this. But you're only talking to like-minded people. I think it creates I think somebody described it as an echo chamber. And I think that might be as fast as the internet and social media can spread. I think it's actually done the opposite and has slowed it down. I think the message is just circling within itself, and it's not getting out there. And then when you do get out there, the world we live in now, this cancel culture, if you say something that makes someone uncomfortable, you run the risk of being canceled, which is, and that makes some people step back and not want to step out and have these engaging conversations. I don't know, my 2 cents worth there.
Yeah, I think the echo chamber point is absolutely right, and it's a big concern of mine. You'd probably find it funny looking at my Facebook feed because I really make an effort to try to hear all different sides of everything, and I'll join liberal groups and conservative groups and read comments and just get a sense of where people are at, what they're feeling. And my Facebook is trying so hard to figure out my political affiliation, and I'm like, that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah,
I just want to engage and
can't
mainly
plaid.
Yeah. But yeah, I think for most people, they sort of get boxed into whatever their political belief is without even realizing it. It's also extremely easy for misinformation to spread on these platforms on both sides. And suddenly everyone is on different realities as to how the world is. And that is not just hard to solve issues, but that becomes a threat to democracy when, like, how do you fix things if you're not on the same page?
Yeah.
So, that's a whole other conversation. Cancel culture. Yeah, I think that's a tricky thing too. I know I'm extremely anxious, probably to a fault, about saying something wrong. But ultimately for me, it's just come down to being empathetic, trying to learn other people's perspectives.
FM if they can't take a joke.
Yeah, I mean, if someone, because I ran my college satire publication for 2 years, and I think that was a valuable experience as a writer, as a manager, but also learning how to write comedy and be held accountable, because as editor-in-chief, I really made a point that I was accountable for everything that went out, and no writer should get blamed for anything they did. It's my job to make sure it'll be okay. So I sort of internally fought many a battle to get certain ideas out of the publication schedule, but certainly I've seen many college satire publications struggle with this and even make national news for making a mistake like that. And I really didn't want that to happen to me. Yeah. Luckily, I only had to do one retraction in my 2 years, but that was a really valuable experience. And I certainly learned that the intent of a joke doesn't equal the impact of a joke. And it's important to try to think about it from all angles, listen if people are feeling a certain way about it. And ultimately, I felt like my job was to entertain. So if people are upset, I didn't do my job. So maybe I should revisit.
Yeah, fair enough. What's on the horizon for the Sweaty Penguin podcast?
So we are growing fast. We brought in a few new team members this last month. We're doing a lot more web content now. So if you go to our website, thesweatypenguin.com, we have listicles, quizzes, fun comics, columns. We're going to be starting a news section very soon, an educational section soon. We'll also be starting a spinoff we sort of soft launched it already, a podcast called Tip of the Iceberg, where I got to keep the pun going.
Yeah. I was going to say the exhausted opossum or something. I don't know. There you go.
Yeah.
Tip of the iceberg. I like that. That's better. That's better.
So I do sort of my take on kind of the big environmental headline of the week, and then I'll answer a question from an audience member. And I think that's a really cool way for our audience to engage more. So lots of cool stuff on the horizon.
I like it. So it's available wherever fine podcasts are sold?
Oh, yeah. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. Also, thesweatypenguin.com. And also check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/thesweatypenguin. You can support the show there, get some cool merch, get bonus content. So that really helps us out as well.
Sweet. All right. Anything else you want to share before we take off here?
I think we covered a lot. I guess the last quick anecdote I'll share, since we are on a pet podcast. So I have a fish tank in my apartment, and that's been a really, really fun experience. But if I can just tell the story of where my fish came from, because that really warms my heart a little bit.
No, the mommy fish and the daddy fish really liked each other. And oh no, not like that. Okay, all right. Where'd they come from?
By the way, I have shrimps in the tank too. And one day I just saw a wall full of shrimp babies. I was like, "What the hell is happening under my roof?"
Who left the Barry White on the shrimp tank there? All right.
Anyway, yeah. So, basically in the Amazon rainforest, there are these basins full of water, and in the wet season the water will rise and all the fish populations will explode, and then in the dry season the water levels will drop and like 90% of them will pass away. And so in the fish keeping world, there's this belief that I think is true most of the time, that you want to buy farm raised fish as opposed to wild fish because you don't want to take them out of their natural habitat. But in this particular case, because of this population dynamic, there are fisheries in the Amazon rainforest where local people are catching these fish and putting them up on the aquarium trade. And that's actually a really, really awesome thing, because these fish would have died otherwise. It's almost like rescuing them. All right. So I was able to get my cardinal tetras from, I was able to get them wild, which presumably would have been from one of those basins. And I thought that was really cool, because not just does it rescue the fish, but it also provides a source of income for locals in the Amazon rainforest who otherwise would likely have to turn to deforestation to make money. So a really cool way that preserving the climate can also lead to economic gains and a lot of cool fish.
Now, did you rescue the fish, or did the fish rescue you? That's what
I'd have to say both.
I was just full of both. All right. Ethan, thanks. The Sweaty Penguin podcast. Check it out. I just love the twisted, fun take on the environmental issues, because it is super serious, and it is it's. You can only laugh at it and then keep trying to do the best, right? That's the model, I guess. So, but Ethan, thank you so much, sweatypenguin.com, and thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really fun to chat with you.